Hello, everyone. My name is Lynn Mackey, and I'm going to be your speaker today for the House Program Frameworks webinar. I'm so honored and happy to be here with you all to share today. My goal is to help you get an understanding of how to create effective and successful basic needs programming for your students using program frameworks. And we're going to talk a little bit about why they're helpful and how you can use them. All right, so our agenda today, we're going to talk about the relevance of frameworks for the kinds of programming that you're doing and engaged in. I'm going to introduce you to the three frameworks just briefly that we're going to talk about today, and then we're going to dive into the trauma-informed approach, the ethics of care, and we'll finish up with compassionate assistance and a Q&A. I will give you all an opportunity to ask questions. Brittany is helping to monitor the chat for me. And so if you have things that come up for you during the presentation, don't hesitate to let us know. All right, so frameworks. What is their relevance for the kind of work that you're doing? First of all, the work that you're doing is very challenging. It's very difficult. You are trying to engage students and trying to uphold their basic human dignity and really support them and help them be successful. And you're making decisions. There are rules to follow. There's a lot of bureaucracy involved at times, and it's really helpful to have a set of tenets or a philosophical underpinning that will help you sort of navigate all of that and hold you to some ground rules to help you make sure that you are doing work that represents you well and that helps students, that helps them heal, helps them recover, and helps them thrive. Uh, Here's the thing that I love about the framework's benefits. I apologize. I see all of these say one now instead of one, two, three, four. Um, the thing that I love about the frameworks, they're not just about you supporting students, they're also about liaisons being supported and liaisons receiving the help that they need and liaisons engaging in self-care. Um, the frameworks also act as a guidepost to help you create an environment, a welcoming space for students. As you know, it's difficult for students to reach out for help. It's difficult for them to engage and ask for help. And so the frameworks can help you have a set of rules or guidelines that, kind of draw students into the services or draw students into your office spaces and departments. And the frameworks also provide a lens for analyzation and examination of the various program designs and policies and practices that you have for your programs. All right, so here's a brief overview of the three frameworks. The trauma-informed approach is what we're going to spend a great deal of our time on because it's a great fit for the kind of work that you're doing. It's really about learning what trauma is, learning about the experiences that our students have had, and then using that information to then design programs that avoid re-traumatization for them, that avoid harming them, and that help them really grow and thrive and heal and recover from what they've experienced. Then we'll move on to ethics of care, which is a feminist philosophical approach to ethics and decision making. It really pushes back on that idea of in order to do the right thing, in order to make the right decision, that you have to stick to a set of rules and everybody has to abide by the same rules and deadlines are deadlines and there's no room for taking situations um, one student at a time or kind of situation by situation. You have to make decisions based on the rules so that everything is fair for everybody. It really pushes back on that and says that care and compassion and the situation or the context, that's a perfectly acceptable way to determine rules when you have to make decisions. And then compassionate assistance is a great kind of in the moment framework. It's really good for when you have students just in your office at your desk. They're going through forms, they're sort of navigating, you're helping them navigate the bureaucracy of the program, signing up for services and things like that. A lot of good tips and tricks for doing that kind of work. All right, the trauma-informed approach. Before we delve into the trauma-informed approach, I really want to talk to you about what trauma is and help you get an understanding of that. So this will be the one and only time that I read from the slide for you because I really want us to take some time to really think about what trauma is and what is meant by the term trauma. The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, SAMHSA, has this definition of trauma. They say individual trauma results from an event, series of events, or set of circumstances that is experienced by an individual as physically or emotionally harmful or life-threatening, and that has lasting adverse effects on the individual's functioning and mental, physical, social, emotional, or spiritual well-being. So notice from this definition that trauma is really defined by the individual. It's about the individual's experience. If they experience it as harmful, if they experience it as negative, then that is trauma to that individual. And so mental health issues can arise from trauma, of course. Anxiety, depression, those kinds of things are a lot more likely to occur in individuals who have had traumatic experiences. Just a quick sort of public service announcement. Remember that I said that the frameworks are not just about students being supported or about liaisons supporting students. It's also about liaisons being supported. Your mental health is important as well. Your state of mind is important as well. And so if you're looking at this definition of trauma and realizing, wow, I am a trauma survivor. I have experienced some traumatic things that I've not healed from that I need to speak to someone about and work through some of that. Please, I encourage you to get some help from a qualified mental health professional. If you don't have family, friends, colleagues to get great referrals from for a great therapist, I encourage you to go to psychologytoday.com. That's a great resource. You can choose a therapist based on your particular needs, gender, faith tradition, cultural background, those kinds of things. All right. Okay, a little bit more about trauma. Um, Trauma occurs because of the harmful experiences that may include violence and abuse, neglect, and loss. Let's think for a minute about the student population that we're serving. Students who are experiencing homelessness and students who have been in the child welfare system, in the foster care system, students in care. They have at minimum experienced loss in the way of not having a stable place to call home, and or losing familiar relatives or caretakers, even if temporarily. That is a loss, and that is traumatic for our students. They are trauma survivors because of that. And as such, again, they may have or are more likely to have mental health challenges such as anxiety and depression. I mean, this really does follow. If you don't know where you're going to live or sleep, or if you don't know if you're bouncing from house to house because you've lost your caretakers due to whatever the circumstance or situation was, that's more likely to cause depression and anxiety and other mental health challenges. So there's a great article by Broton in the resources section of this slide deck if you want to take a closer look at that information. All right, so I really want to use this webinar as an opportunity for us to think about what it might look like for you to implement one of these frameworks or different of these frameworks at a time at your institution. So if you think of things about how to implement these various frameworks while we are discussing them, please put that in chat. And when it comes time to discuss, please feel free to unmute yourself and talk more about it. All right. What is the trauma-informed approach? I'm just going to go over these 3 points, and then we're going to have an opportunity to process this information and think about sort of how to put some of this in practice at your institutions, okay? So the first point I want to go over is that the trauma-informed approach is really about serving vulnerable populations. Again, learning what trauma is, learning about the various experiences our students have had, and then implementing and designing programs and policies and practices that have as a focus helping the students heal, helping them recover from the trauma that they have experienced, helping them to thrive, helping them to regain their voice, helping to empower them, those kinds of things. Trauma-informed programs are about taking that knowledge that you have about trauma, again, and incorporating that into your program design. What does it mean if you've known that students have had certain kinds of traumatic experiences? What does your program design then look like because of that? And this approach also serves as a lens for you to examine your policies and practices and procedures. Are you designing programs and are you implementing policies that re-traumatize students or harm them in some way? Or are you designing programs that really help students thrive and help them heal and grow? All right. Here is some information from the Black Homelessness in Illinois report. You have a link to this report in the resources section of this slide deck. This is some information that they have here about what particularly Black homeless youth or students experiencing homelessness who are African American may have experienced. And this is a really important report to look through if you get the opportunity, because racially minoritized students are more likely to be experiencing homelessness. And so it talks a lot about their experiences of homelessness and their experiences being in care. Okay, it says, it talks about how some of the youth in a shelter, that the agency staff viewed them as lacking motivation, not wanting to get a job, not wanting to go to school, but wanting instead to just stay at the shelter all day. Not acknowledging that they had or any sort of goals or dreams for a better life, not taking into account all of the various barriers to employment that students in this situation face, or that youth in this situation face. And so knowing that our students have been exposed to these kinds of negative assumptions, these biases, these myths that agency staff have held, what can we do as practitioners, as liaisons, to design programs or design policies or practices or procedures to ensure that we're not re-traumatizing students with the way that we operate? I have a few ideas, but this is an opportunity for you all to let me know what kinds of ideas you all have about that. Feel free to unmute yourself and speak about this, or to put it in the chat if you have some thoughts and ideas about how to operationalize a trauma-informed approach, and how to prevent the re-traumatization of our students through our programs and policies, et cetera. Let's see. Check your own implicit bias about these students. I love that, Teresa. How are you? Thank you so much for that. Absolutely. We have to do that. That's one of the things that I had in mind about this. And I'll just go ahead and move to the next slide so that you can see what I was thinking, if it'll let me. Yes, checking our own implicit bias, offering sensitivity training or professional development for the programs that we're designing, having that be a foundation of program design, having that be a foundation of training for the professionals who work in your office, who work in your department, and offer them data that dispels the myths and that illuminates the real causes of homelessness in this country. In this case with Black how about racism, discrimination, redlining, all of those things, criminalization, all of those things have contributed to homelessness for Black youth in our country. And so put the data out there and let folks see that so that we can avoid doing additional harm to our students. Learning the signs of trauma in youth, absolutely. Thank you, Tricia. All right. All right, now that you have sort of an example of what it might look like to operationalize this particular framework, let's move on to the various principles of the trauma-informed approach. There are about 6 principles here that we're going to go through. So safety is one of them. We want to make sure that students feel physically, emotionally, psychologically safe in our spaces that we create. And students will tell you what makes them feel safe and what does not feel safe. I encourage us all to listen to students as we serve them. They will tell you what makes them feel safe and what does not. One of the things that does not make students feel safe at times is filling out paperwork. When it comes to um, going to the food pantry and getting food from there, if they have to fill out a form for that, sometimes that makes students feel uneasy. There may have been other times and experiences in their life where they completed paperwork and then them or their family members harm came to them somehow or some sort of unfavorable circumstance came to them. They feel that it is the result or was the result of them filling out that paperwork. So maybe scanning their IDs, if that is an option, to collect the data that you might need for various services, and not having the paperwork there for them to fill out, that might be helpful. Okay, trustworthiness and transparency. When we do collect data, and we have to do that, that's a part of what your duties are as a house liaison. Tell the students what you're going to do with it. Tell them why you're collecting the data. Tell them who's going to see it. Tell them that you're going to use it to improve programming. That might be something that would help them open up to you, share more with you. You'll learn more about them and their experiences, and you'll learn more about how to improve your programs and services. Peer support. Peers refers to students with lived experiences of trauma, those who have had traumatic experiences and those who are trauma survivors. Do everything that you can to make them a part of your program, whether it's hiring them as student employees or ambassadors of some sort of volunteers. They will really lend credibility to your program. They will make other students feel comfortable taking advantage of the services, using the services, and coming into the center, coming into your space. They will legitimize the programs and services for you. They'll basically let their peers know that, hey, this is a legitimate place. These people are great. They really care about us. This is a program with integrity. So do that as often as you can, incorporate peer support. Collaboration and mutuality. This involves power sharing and decision making. Again, incorporating those peers, those students into the program. Can they help with marketing efforts? Can they look at forms? Can they look at flyers? And can they give you information about how to advertise to students who are experiencing homelessness and students who are in care? Is there a board that they can sit on? Some sort of advisory committee or council that they can sit on. This also is something that helps them find their voice and empowers them as well. All right. Empowerment, voice, and choice. help students to recognize their strengths and their experiences. Help them to recognize that they are survivors, that they are resilient, that they have been through a lot, but they're still here. And their voice has been diminished many times, especially for those who are racial and ethnic minorities, those of the LGBTQ population. Those students have really had their voices silenced. So anything you can think of to help them find their voice again, empower them is what you want to do. Here's a thing that may seem small, but can be a very big deal to students is offering them choice when there is a food pantry to the extent possible. Many of them may have not had the opportunity to choose what is on their plate or to choose what they're being served, or to choose the kinds of meals that they eat. So offering them that choice is a great thing to do. Cultural, historical, and gender issues. This goes back to professional development, checking your own biases, offering training that allows staff members and liaisons to identify their biases, our implicit biases, stereotypes, and whatnot, to acknowledge them and to address them. That's very important, again, to avoid re traumatizing students and to avoid additional harm. All right, quick discussion here. What would it look like to operationalize this particular approach at your institution? Have you had some thoughts as we have talked about this? You can put it in the chat or you can unmute yourself and let us know what you're thinking in terms of implementing the trauma-informed approach at your institution. Is there anyone? Anything that has come to mind or things that you're already doing that line up with this particular approach? Anything? Our food pantry is a choice shopping format. Excellent. Thank you, Teresa. I volunteer at a food pantry, and it is so um, just refreshing for a lot of um, the community members who come in for us to say to them, would you like beef or chicken or pork or fish? You get to choose one. Do you like green beans or corn? Or this is the miscellaneous section of the food pantry. You can choose three miscellaneous items of your choice. And some of them are fun items, what I call fun items, chips and soda and things like that. And others are some healthy choices. I see we have a hand raised here. Is it Jamie?
Yes.
Go ahead, Jamie.
Yes. These things out that students may not want to continue to share information about themselves or their own individual practices and individuals. So if there was like a point person that was more of a generalist, that could assist with like the advising, that could assist with financial aid questions, that could assist with enrollment questions.
I'm sorry, Jamie. I'm having a hard time hearing you. Brittany and everyone else, can you hear Jamie?
No,
This, the
it sounds a bit like you're in a fishbowl, Jamie. If you are able to type in the chat, we definitely want to hear your comment and your question.
Absolutely.
I'll try to type it into the chat.
Okay, I apologize. I wanted to hear your voice. Okay, Trisha says we have a snack cart that allows students to grab snacks and a full pantry once per week. Awesome. Our snack cart is located outside our counseling area, so proximity might lead to familiarity. Absolutely, I love that. Yes, it's near the counseling area, so that leads to familiarity. I love that. Thank you, Trisha. Calvin, for filling out paperwork or other documents, many of the students just find it helpful to sit with another individual. Sure, just having another human being there with them. We have several individuals who have experience in the different benefits forms, ABE and scholarships or grant opportunities. Absolutely, I love that. I think that that increases the connection that we have with students and the relationship, improves the relationship with them. Awesome, just having someone sit there with them. I love that. Wally says, I see the empowerment at our campus pantry by their getting to choose. Yes, our student peer workers do set them at ease. Wonderful. Even more than I can. Yes, absolutely. The peer workers, again, give that sense of legitimacy. They let students know this is a place where you can heal. Not because the peers are informative more than I, but because they trust their peer voices. Absolutely. They're going to trust them more than they trust us. They've been through some of the same things. Okay, Jamie says, provide a generalist at the institution so the student does not need to repeat their history. Yes, for them having to, so that they don't have to say the same thing over and over and over again about what happened, about what they've experienced. Yes, someone to assist with advising, enrollment, financial aid, business services, all by one individual to assist them through the process. Absolutely, absolutely so important. Thank you so much, Jamie. Thank you, everyone, for participating there. All right, we're going to move on to our next framework, ethics of care. So again, this is a feminist philosophical approach. Psychologist Carol Gilligan and philosopher Nell Noddings started to pioneer this work back in the 1960s. Carol Gilligan sort of kicked it off, and then Nell Noddings added some more um, great things to it. And it really pushes back on that whole sort of way of decision making that says, every decision has to be made based on rules that everyone follows to the T. The context or the situation that the person is experiencing as an individual, that doesn't matter. Showing care and concern and compassion for the individual, that doesn't matter. The way that you make a moral decision, the way that you do the right thing is you stick to the rules so that everybody is treated fairly. Everybody is treated the same way. And this framework really says, no, you know what? You can show care and concern and compassion for a person, and you can make a decision based on the situation that they're in. It could be a case by case basis. And that's a perfectly legitimate way to make decisions. In your roles as liaisons, you often need to apply rules. You have to use your professional judgment. You have to make decisions about things, and it can be difficult. And oftentimes we're bleeding hearts. Wear our hearts on our sleeves. We care so much. We're compassionate. We wouldn't be in this work if we weren't. And so that it's perfectly acceptable for you to use your care and compassion to make decisions when it comes to the work that we do here. All right. Here is a brief example. We're going to talk a little bit about how to use ethics of care here. The linked portions here, these are quick videos that if you want to go back and take a look at them, you can. But this is from All American Homecoming. Now, I will say, all right, don't judge me for watching this show. All right, it's not that I'm watching a show about college kids for entertainment purposes. Okay, I'm working as a higher ed consultant, so this was research. Okay, this was research. I don't want anybody to, you know, get that mistaken. Um, so it's a great show. And in this particular episode, season 2, episode 2, one of the characters, Cam, he gets a notification that all of his classes were dropped due to non-payment. And so he goes to this finance office and he says, hey, I got this notification. I'm not sure why this happened because I've secured a grant award that should cover the first installment of my payment plan. And so, is there any way that you can hold my classes while this money comes in, while I get this thing worked out? And the finance office employee, what's her name? Miss Robinette, says to him basically, well, if I did that for every student who was waiting for money to come in, the university would be out of business tomorrow. We can't do that for you. Deadlines are deadlines for a reason. And so unless you are in this line to make a payment, you can move right along because you are holding up my line. All right. So Miss Robinette then had to make this decision. All right. Here is Cam in this situation, and he says, you know what, this is not fair because I didn't do anything wrong. The grant is coming. I've secured the award. I'm not sure why it hasn't posted to my account yet, but can you do me a solid here? Can something be done so that my classes aren't dropped? I want to talk about this for a second because it goes back to decision making, rules, and using professional judgment, um, all of those kinds of things. I want to talk about how this situation could have been handled differently by Miss Robinette and how we can handle these kinds of situations. Anyone want to share? You can unmute yourself or or put it in the chat. Oh, wait, lead with kindness. Yes. Thank you, Tricia. Absolutely. Which is what, let's see, if I didn't have the authority, I would find out who did and refer him at least. Yes. That's a kind, compassionate, caring thing to do. Sure. In her situation, in her position, Miss Robinette did not have the authority to say, okay, Cam, I'll just go ahead and, hold your classes. But she could have made a referral to someone who can make the decision or showed kindness and compassion in that way. And she didn't because she's a rule follower, have to do the same thing for everybody, not dependent upon the situation or the context. So eventually what happens is, let's see, Lee says advocate for change with those that have power. Yes, yes, yes. Use data to influence change. Absolutely. So here's the thing, Lee, and you've run us right into it. Um, we have an opportunity when we see these kinds of situations, and we should always be open to the possibility that we're wrong, or our systems are wrong, or our policies are wrong, because let's face it, we see a lot of wrongness in the work that we do. We should always be open to acknowledging that, you know what, he's right. That doesn't make sense. Maybe what I can do is take the situation to the powers that be and explain and say, hey, is there something that we can do for students who find themselves in this situation, who can document that the money is on the way, that they've secured the particular award, but it's just not here for whatever reason. And so that is essentially what happened. But Cam had to advocate for himself. He had a relationship with the president of the university, Dr. P, and he tells her what happened. And she then changes the policy for all students who are in that kind of situation so that the university can show care and compassion and consideration and accommodate them based on a situation that is not their fault. So that's the kind of thing that we're talking about when it comes to ethics of care, care and compassion and concern, and a case by case situation, those kind of situational, contextual things. Um, it's perfectly acceptable to consider how care and compassion would dictate what should happen in the situation, what decisions should be made. All right. Let's see if I can move on to the next. All right. So what is caring? There are just three principles um, about ethics of care that I want to go through. It's about a person's commitment to act to improve someone else's situation or condition. And um, Carol Gilligan and Neil Nodding said that that's the helping others is what caring people do, is what that's the moral thing to do. That's the ethical thing to do. And ethics of care, keep in mind, are not just for students, they're for liaisons as well, they're for practitioners as well. Um, you all will hear the stories of students and their traumatic experiences, and that can be a source of secondary traumatic stress for you. And so it's very, very important that doing this very heavy, very challenging work, in doing that, that you engage in serious self-care, a regular established routine that you've engaged in to take care of yourself, to make sure that your state of mind, your mental health is in a good place, because you deserve to be healthy. You deserve um, to be well. You matter. You matter. That's very important. Um, especially if you are a sensitive person, and there's a woman, Susan Cain, who wrote a book called Quiet. It's about introverts. I'm a very extreme introvert, and so I am a sensitive person who, when I hear or see human suffering, it impacts me very deeply. It's very, very difficult for me. It's stressful for me, and so if you're a sensitive person like me, all the more reason to make sure that you engage in regular, regular self-care. All right, relationships is another component of ethics of care, and that's about the connection between two people where one of the people perceives that there's a need by the other, and then they respond to that need with a caring action to ameliorate their suffering or improve their well-being. And that connection, that relationship, that helps shape human identity. I didn't put this in the slide, but really I think what they mean here about relationships is that that connection that we have with students, it gives us an opportunity to share with them the positive, accurate information about themselves that they might not see for themselves or within themselves. And that information begins to shape their identity. They begin to see that, oh, I'm not worthless. I'm priceless. I'm resilient. I'm a survivor. I'm valuable. I'm capable because of our interaction with them and because of us telling them and sharing with them and helping them to see, look at how much you've been through and you're so resilient. You're still here. You're in school. You're pursuing your goals. You're pursuing your dreams. That helps them um, realize and understand who they are, and also helps them to transition from that belief that some of them may have that food and housing insecurities are their fault, that that constitutes a moral failure on their part. They did something wrong to put themselves in this situation. It helps dispel all of that, the relationship, the connection. All right. Context. The moral decision depends on the situation. Again, the circumstances of each individual situation. It's a case by case kind of thing. You apply care contextually. Everyone does not have to be treated the same way in the same, you know, you can apply care contextually. Does not all have to be uniform in order for it to be fair. So use your care and compassion, and that's perfectly acceptable to use those things to determine the rules. All right. Anything else about how to operationalize the ethics of care framework at your institution? How are you putting it into practice? Anyone want to share anything about what they're doing with ethics of care? If you've had situations like the one Miss Robinette was in, if you've helped students advocate for themselves or advocated for them, data is always a really important thing to use. Anyone? Oh, we held a learning seminar on empathy. I love that, Tricia. Yeah, so important. Empathy, being empathetic to others. That's wonderful. I really like that. Anybody else? Okay. All right. Let's see. Let's see. Advocate for policies that do not create additional barriers for students. Absolutely. And so many of those policies have unintended consequences. And when we see those unintended consequences, we've got to advocate for policies that don't create more barriers. We have created lines of communication to several VPs through different departments. I love that. It allows us to move questions or concerns up the chain quicker. Yes, because oftentimes it's just so hard to get a response on whatever the question or concern is. So you've created lines of communication. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Okay, let's move on to our last framework, compassionate assistance. All right, again, this one gives you a lot of sort of tips and tricks about how to do the in the moment kind of work with students where you're helping them complete framework, sitting next to them to help them complete framework and navigate a lot of the bureaucracy that is involved in them becoming receiving services. So it was this framework was presented by California State University Chico, and it helped staff when students were applying for the CalFresh program that addresses food insecurity. And their information is in one of the resources that you'll see, the California handbook on basic needs services. You'll see that in the resources if you want more information about them. So steps provided in this framework are really best practices for all of the basic needs service delivery that you're doing. A lot of this will be kind of common sense to you. It's basic tips and tricks. So we'll just go through it quickly. Oh, we're at 144. It'll just take a few minutes for us to go through this. Some of this I've already said as well. You want to make the service space inviting and inclusive for students. So this includes things like making sure that to the extent that you can, that there's a diverse staff that represents the students that you're serving, that the environment is warm and friendly, that there are markers and materials that are in the languages that your students speak, that various cultures are acknowledged and embraced, that there is information and there are markers in the space that let students of all kinds know that they are welcome there. That's basically what they're saying here, okay? All right. Be mindful of the language being used. So you notice that we say students experiencing homelessness rather than homeless students. We want to acknowledge the dignity of each of our students and point out that experiencing homelessness is a temporary situation. It's not a sort of permanent characteristic of who they are, all right? They are a student who is passing through a particular experience called homelessness, all right? They are not homeless students, okay? And also, students may not be aware, they won't call themselves or would not consider themselves homeless if they are couch surfing or living with friends or relatives. So it's helpful to use those kinds of terms as opposed to using the term homelessness because they wouldn't know that they were eligible for services for students experiencing homelessness otherwise. All right, be prepared. Again, we talked about our students being trauma survivors. And so they may come to your offices in crisis, and I'm sure many of them have already. So make sure that the team is well informed of campus resources for counseling, that they're trauma informed, that they know about services to refer students to. Okay, be prepared with that information. Be an engaged and active listener. Students' needs travel together, so listen to make sure that you're meeting all of the needs that they have. If they come in for emergency assistance, they may also need assistance with food. They may also need assistance with childcare, etc. Okay. Clarify the next steps and identify potential issues. Just when completing all of the steps with them, make sure that you have a written checklist because it's a lot of overwhelming information a lot of times. Make sure that they understand what's the next step in the process, that you're going to contact them. If things take longer than expected, make sure they know the expected amount of time that it will take for them to hear from you, for their application to be processed, et cetera. And let them know too that there is going to be someone there, you or another person who is going to walk through any sort of issues that pop up. Make sure staff have time to decompress. Here we go again with taking care of yourself. All right. So if you can, and I know it's very difficult and trying at times, try to avoid scheduling appointments back to back to back. Take some time to take care of yourself, to decompress, to process what's happening, and to make sure that your mental health, your state of mind is in a healthy place. All right. Any questions, comments, concerns about compassionate assistance using that framework at various times in your service. Oops, sorry. Let's see if I missed anything in the chat. Wally says, it is not just doing our job, but how we do it that can make all the difference for someone. Absolutely. How we do it. And that's what these frameworks are about, sort of giving you guidelines of the how to do the work, because that's what makes a difference. Showing the care and concern, that makes a difference for sure. Trying to avoid re-traumatization, that makes a difference for sure. Um, absolutely. Thank you, Wally. Anyone else? I'm going to move on to, let's see here. Hold on, I've done something. Let's see. Okay. Okay. So those are the resources that I was telling you about. You have the Black Homelessness Report in Illinois, and the Broton article about mental health, the California Community College's Basic Needs Center kit, the work of Carol Gilligan, her book, and then some the trauma informed approach article from SAMHSA. Any questions in general? We're at 1:49. There's my contact information. If anybody wants to reach out to me, if you have other things that come up for you, questions and whatnot, after today, I'd be happy to answer them. Anyone, anything. I've enjoyed you all so much today. This was helpful. I'm so glad it was helpful, Tricia. Thank you for coming. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I'm so grateful. I hope I helped somebody. Oh, yay, I was helpful. Good. I hope this helps you all, and I hope it helps the students that you serve, okay? Oh, thank you so much, you all.